Hello everyone, welcome back. We're back with another Power Rankings video, week 19 of our Power Rankings series that has seen a couple of shipments in the honorable mentions and a new number 2 in our top 10. We'll get to all of the movement coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here at the End-to-End Hockey channel. Now before we begin this video, don't forget to like this video and subscribe below. Thank you for all of your support. We'd never go without you guys, so if you haven't already, don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below. It really does help out the channel, and we're on the road to 500 subscribers. And don't forget to leave a comment in the comment section below discussing all that was discussed in today's video. And don't forget to stay tuned for the end of the week on March 7th around 11:30ish a.m. We're going to be doing another live trade deadline video talking about all the moves that happened before the trade deadline this year, so don't forget to stay tuned for that. But in today's video, we've got another Power Rankings video to discuss. Week 19 of our Power Rankings. There's been some movement, mostly just flip-flopping, but there has been a little bit of movement, including 2 new honorable mentions that once again joined this week's Power Rankings list. So we'll get to all of those things here. We're going to start, as we usually do, with the 4 honorable mentions. So the 4th honorable mention is a team who's coming back into the honorable mentions for the first time in a couple of weeks, and that is the Montreal Canadiens. Canadiens had a pretty solid week last week. They were undefeated. They went 3-0-0, started out the week with an impressive 4-3 overtime victory over San Jose, and then had a home-and-home with Buffalo, winning both games. I think they won the first one like 4-1 or 4-2, and then they won the other one 4-3 in overtime. So a couple of extra time wins for the Canadiens this week, but they do get 3 wins, which has put them only 1 point back of a playoff spot in the Eastern Conference. So a very fantastic week there for Montreal, still performing above what I was expecting them to do this year, but they're still doing really good for what they were expected to do, and that's sort of complicated what they're going to do at the trade deadline, but still. Canadiens are doing quite well right now, and after going 3-0 this week, I had them in my honorable mentions. Like offensively, Evans, Anderson, Dvorak, Caulfield, Suzuki doing great offensively. Defensively, with Matheson, Savard, and Hudson doing great defensively, and in net, Montembeault and Dobbs are doing great in net. So all in all, a very fantastic week from the Canadiens, and I had them as my 4th honorable mention. My 3rd honorable mention is a team who also went undefeated last week, and that's the Columbus Blue Jackets, entering back for the first time in a couple of weeks. They went 2-0-0. They started out the week with a win over Detroit, and ended the week with a win over Detroit. Had a home-and-home with the Red Wings, including the Stadium Series, and won both games, which now have the Jackets as the first wildcard team in the Eastern Conference. So a very fantastic week there from the Jackets, who have been rolling ever since the Four Nations break, and that's why I have them my honorable mentions with a 30-22-8 record. So they're looking pretty good, and they're in a really good position at the trade deadline. Like offensively, Johnson, Marchenko, Jenner, James Van Riemsdyk, Zach Aston-Reese all doing really good offensively. Defensively, Werenski, Severson, Matejchuk doing great defensively in the net. Merzlikins and Tarasov have been doing great. So all in all, a fantastic week there from the Jackets, going 2-0-0, including the Stadium Series win, and I had them as my 3rd honorable mention. My 2nd honorable mention this week is a team who was 2nd honorable mention last week, and that's the Tampa Bay Lightning. And they continued on with their extremely torrid pace. They carried over from February as they started out with a win over the Calgary Flames, shutting them out 3-0. And then they took down the Washington Capitals 3-1, but then their winning streak and point streak came to an end last night as they lost at the hands of the Florida Panthers. So the loss was not overly great. You do want to see them beat their Florida rivals, but they were on a heater right before then, so I can see why they would lose one game. But still, getting 4 of a possible 6 points, 2 of a possible 3 wins this week was fantastic for the Tampa Bay Lightning, and they're still one of the top teams in the NHL, 3rd in the Atlantic right now with a 35-21-4 record. So still one of the top teams in the NHL. Offensively, Kucherov, Point, Hagel, Gensel, Paul doing really good offensively. Defensively, Hedman, Perbix, Chernak doing really good defensively and in net. Vasilevsky and Johansson continue to thrive in net. So all in all, another great week from Tampa, and I had them as my 2nd honorable mention. And my 1st honorable mention this week is a team who drops out of the top 10, and that is the Los Angeles Kings. Kings had the worst record of any of my honorable mentions or top 10 people in the Power Rankings this week. They went 0-3-1. They started the week with an overtime loss to Vancouver before they lost to Dallas. They lost to St. Louis, and they had a very embarrassing loss to Chicago. So really bad stretch here from LA, which has sort of soured their stretch of potentially passing Edmonton in the standings. So it was not overly a great week there from LA, who is now at 31-20-8, still 3rd in the Pacific Division. So wasn't really great stuff from Los Angeles, but they're still in 3rd in the Pacific. They're still a top-end team in the Western Conference. Offensively, with guys guys like Fiala, Byfield, Kopitar, Kempe, Laferriere. Defensively, Doughty, Anderson, Spence doing really good defensively in the net. Kemper and Riddick, well, you want to see them be better. We're still all right last week. Kings are still a top team in the Western Conference, but I do drop them out of my top 10 power rankings and into first honorable mention slot. So that's my 4 honorable mentions. And lastly here, going over to my top 10 power rankings. So the 10th spot this week in the power rankings, we have the New Jersey Devils, once again repeating as the 10th team in my power rankings. This week they didn't have an overly good week again. They went 1-2-0. They beat the Utah Hockey Club, but sandwiched in between 2 losses to Vegas and Colorado. So it wasn't as bad of a week as Los Angeles had, which is why I keep them as my 10th team in my power rankings. But still, it was not an overly fantastic week, and that is why I'm keeping them as the top 10 power rankings. But still, they're third in the Metro Division. They're not having an overly bad stretch right now, but still, you want to see them win a couple of games, especially that one over Vegas with Markstrom's return. But still, they're a decent team offensively. Jack Hughes, Palat, Meyer, Heischer, Halla doing really good offensively. Defensively, Hamilton, Luke Hughes, Nemec doing pretty good defensively in the net. Allen and Markstrom, who's now back, I'm doing pretty good in net. So all in all, a pretty decent week from the Devils, even though they only got 2 of a possible 6 points. And I keep them as my 10th team in my power rankings. The 9th team in my power rankings this week is the Carolina Hurricanes. They were honorable mention 1 last week, but they had a solid week this week, so I bumped them up to 9th in my power rankings. They had a really good week. Started out the week with a win over the Buffalo Sabres. Then they felt the hands of the slipping Edmonton Oilers, which wasn't overly good, but they were able to rebound off of that and beat the Calgary Flames in overtime. So it wasn't an overly fantastic week. They beat the Sabres and the Flames, which is teams you'd expect them to beat. Lost to the Oilers, which wasn't overly fantastic, but still, this team's in a really good position. Top 2 in the Metro, at the 2nd spot in the Metro Division with a 35-22-4 record. Like, this team is still a really good team, and they won 2 of a possible 3 games last week, got 4 of a possible 6 points. So they're still doing pretty good last week, which is why I do keep them at 9th team in my power rankings. Like, offensively, Aho, Rantanen, Jarvis, Martinook, Carey doing pretty good offensively. Defensively, with guys like Orlov, Chatfield, Burns doing pretty good defensively in the net. Anderson and Kochekov are still doing pretty good in net. So all in all, a pretty good week there from the Hurricanes, and they put them as my 9th team in my power rankings. 8th team in my power rankings this week is the Minnesota Wild, as I dropped them 1 spot from last week. They had a decent week this week, but they went 1-2-0. They started out the week with a back-to-back, and they lost both of them, losing to Utah and Colorado, before getting a 1-0 shutout victory over Boston. So the win over Boston was very impressive, but they got absolutely obliterated by both Colorado and Utah, which is why I do drop them a spot here to the 8th spot in my power rankings. Still, they're a really good team, same record as Carolina with a 35-22-4 record. So they're still one of the top teams in the Western Conference, one of the top teams in the league, and they're still producing a really high level in the top 3 spot in Central. But I do drop them a little bit here. Like, offensively, want to see them be a little bit better, but still, Zuccarello, Rossi, Ogren, Eriksson, Shore doing pretty good offensively. Defensively, Bogosian, Spurgeon, and Faber doing pretty good defensively. And in net, Gustafsson and Fleury continue to be a solid goaltending tandem. So all in all, wasn't an overly fantastic week there from the Wild, but I do have them as my 8th team in my power rankings. 7th team in my power rankings this week is the Edmonton Oilers. They did all right this week. They went 1-1-0. They continued on with their horrendous losing streak by losing to the Florida Panthers 4-3 before they finally ended their losing streak by beating Carolina, as we just mentioned, 3-1. So went 1-1-0, ended their losing streak, which is a positive note. That's why I do bump them up 1 spot from last week. They're still one of the top teams in the Pacific Division, one of the top teams in the league at a 35-21-4 record. So that is why I put them up ahead of the Minnesota Wild. Like, still, they're not looking overly good, and they barely beat Carolina. So you want to see them have a little bit more better games before I put them up even higher. But still, offensively, McDavid, Podkolzin, Hyman, Skinner, Drysdale doing pretty good offensively. Defensively, with guys like Bouchard, Ekholm, and Nurse doing pretty good defensively in the net. Both Skinner and Picard have done all right this week. So all in all, a pretty good week there from the Oilers, as they went 1-1-0, and that's why I had them as my 7th team in my power rankings. 6th team in my power rankings this week is the Toronto Maple Leafs. They do drop them 1 spot from last week, and other teams who went flip-flopped. They had a pretty good week this week. They went 2-0-1. Started out the week with a win over the New York Rangers. Then they had a back-to-back. They were able to overtime victory over the Pittsburgh Penguins 6-5 before they blew a 2-goal lead and lost in the show to San Jose 3-2. So that shutout loss is why I do bump them. You should hold on to a lead against the San Jose Sharks, but still 5 out of possible 6 points, 2 out of possible 3 wins. That's not anything to scoff at for this week. They still have a record of 38-20-3 and are tied for the lead in the Atlantic Division, so I can't really bet against them right now. They're still looking like a lethal team. Offensively, Nylander, Nyes, Tavares, Marner, Matthews doing pretty good offensively. Defensively, Riley, McCabe, Oliver Ekman-Larsson, pretty dang good defensively this week, and in net, Wollen Stellaris gave them some pretty solid goaltending. So all in all, even though he didn't have a perfect week, 5 possible 6 points is not overly bad. Still tied for the top spot in the Atlantic Division, and had them as my 6th team in my power rankings. 5th team in my power rankings this week was 6th team last week. Another team who flip-flopped, and that's the Florida Panthers. Panthers were perfect this week. They went 3-0-0. They were able to beat the Edmonton Oilers 4-3. Then they beat the Calgary Flames 3-0 before, like we talked about, they ended the Tampa Bay Lightning losing streak, beating them 2-1. So 3 are possible, 3 wins. They're up to 38-21, 3-1, the top teams in the Atlantic Division, and they're still looking really, really good right now. So that's why I have them up to my 5th spot in my power rankings. Like, they're still looking really lethal offensively. Barkov, Louis Strinen, Lundell, Rodriguez, Bennett looking all really good offensively. Defensively, Ekblad, 4th link, Seth Jones are looking pretty good defensively. And in net, Bobrovsky and Drieger have been doing pretty dang good in net. So all in all, a perfect week from the Panthers that bumps them up to my 5th spot in my power rankings. 4th spot in my power rankings continues to be my Vegas Golden Knights. They remain at the 4th spot in my power rankings after going 2-0-0 this week. A solid week there from the Knights as they narrowly beat the Blackhawks 7-5 before they had a 2-0 shutout victory over the Devils. So a couple of interesting wins. You should easily beat Chicago. That shouldn't have been a 7-5 game. And they had shut out the really good New Jersey Devils. So a pretty good week there from Vegas. They're up to 36-18-6. They're still the top team in the Pacific Division, one of the top teams in the Western Conference and the NHL, which is why I do keep them as my 4th team in my power rankings. Like offensively, Carlson, Hurdle, Stone, Barbashev, Eichel, all looking great offensively. Defensively, Pietrangelo, Hanifin, Haig doing pretty good defensively, and in net, Hill and Samsonov have been doing all right in net. So going perfect again this week, going 2-0-0 was pretty good for Vegas, and that's why I have them as 4th in my power rankings again. So my power rankings this week, and dropping a spot from last week is the Washington Capitals. The first time the Capitals have dropped in quite some time out of the top 2 in the power rankings. The Capitals not having an overly great week last week. They continued on with their losing streak by losing to the St. Louis Blues, and then fell to the Tampa Bay Lightning before they ended their 3-game losing streak by narrowly beating Ottawa 5-4 in a shootout after blowing a 3-goal lead. So all in all, it wasn't an overly fantastic week there from Washington. You want to see them beat at least one of Tampa or St. Louis. Only got to a possible 6 points, and they nearly lost that game against Ottawa too after having a 3-goal lead. So it wasn't a great week there from the Capitals, but because of how good they are and because they're still one of the top 2 teams points-wise in the NHL, I am going to keep them in the top 3. Like offensively, Ovechkin, Mangiapane, Dubois, McMichael, Strome doing great offensively. Defensively, Sandin, Trevor Van Riemsdyk, Carlson doing great defensively. And in net, Lindgren and Thompson continue to be a lethal duo in net. So all in all, Capitals didn't have an overly great week this week, but I am keeping them in my top 3. News number 2 in my power rankings this week is the Dallas Stars. Stars had a great week this week, just like Vegas, going 2-0-0. Start of the week with a victory over Los Angeles, and then they doubled up the St. Louis Blues 6-3, so a couple of really impressive wins there from a lethal Stars team, who is now on the verge of becoming the 2nd team in the NHL to hit the 40 win mark with a 39-19-2 record. So Dallas is looking lethal right now. Offensively, this team is clicking on all cylinders. Hintz, Robertson, Stankoven, Duchesne, Granlund, all looking great offensively. Defensively, Liabushkin, Dumba, Ceci doing pretty good defensively, even though you want to see him do a little bit better. And in net, Onger and the Smiths continue to be 2 lethal goaltenders in the goaltending crease. So all in all, 2 out of possible 2 wins, even if it wasn't against overly impressive opponents. And Dallas continues to be one of the top teams in the NHL. So that's why I put them up to number 2 in my power rankings. And for the 4th straight week, I think it is, the number 1 team remains the Winnipeg Jets. Now, Jets actually had a little bit of a slip-up last week. They continued on with their franchise-setting winning streak by beating the Ottawa Senators 4-1 before they lost 2-1 narrowly to Nashville and then lost 2-1 in a shootout to Philadelphia. So they went 1-1-1 last week, which isn't overly good given how hot of a team they were over the past couple of weeks. But still, getting 3 out of possible 6 points is not overly bad. 1 out of possible 3 wins isn't overly fantastic, but it's something I think that the Jets will take, and they still are the closest teams to the 90-point plateau. They're still the league leaders in points, which is why I am keeping them as the top team in my power rankings for this week. Like offensively, you want to see them do a little bit better, but still Connor, Shifley, Ehlers, Velarde, Nemesnikov doing great offensively. Defensively, another solid week as Pionk, DeMello and Morris are doing great defensively, and in net, Hellebuyck and Comrie continue to produce stellar level goaltending for this Jets team. So all in all, a mediocre week there from the Jets at 1-1-1, but I do keep them as my top team in this week's power rankings. So definitely, those are my power rankings as it sits right now. Just to quickly mention, I did take 2 teams out of my honorable mention from last week and put 2 new teams in this week. So last week, my 3rd honorable mention, which was Detroit, and my 4th honorable mention, which was Utah, I took out this week, and I put in my 3rd honorable mention, which was Columbus, and my 4th honorable mention, which was Montreal. So those were only 2 teams that I swapped in and out as of last week. But just to recap here are my top 10 power rankings for this week. So as it sits right now, my 10th team in my power rankings is the New Jersey Devils. My 9th team in my power rankings is the Carolina Hurricanes. 8th team is the Minnesota Wild. 7th is the Edmonton Oilers. 6th is the Toronto Maple Leafs. 5th the Florida Panthers. 4th, the Vegas Golden Knights. 3rd, the Washington Capitals. 2nd, the Dallas Stars. And my number 1 team for the 4th consecutive week is the Winnipeg Jets. So definitely, let me know your guys' thoughts on all of that down in the comment section below. I'll tell you guys' opinion on all of this. They put anyone too high, they put anyone too low. And if you had to make power rankings after this week, week 19, the NHL season, who would you have in your power rankings? Definitely, let me know your guys' thoughts on all of that down in the comment section below. That's all I'm going to talk for today. Remember to like this video. If you're watching, subscribe below. Thank you for all your support. We're going to do without you guys. So if you haven't already, don't forget the subscribe button down below. And don't forget to comment down in the comment section below. This is all that I was discussing in today's video. Also a blog talking about news, rumors, and analysis, stuff like that. So check that out. I'll link that down in the description below. And I can't wait to see you guys all for the next video. See you guys soon.